if we can keep your revenue level the same and drop your costs, that's the same as doubling your revenue.
You're listening to the best doggone money advice with John Neal and Tucker, the rescue dog.
Hey, John, we're back for another short podcast. And today I want to talk about some things that can help businesses grow. And one of the services you offer is a fractional CFO. You know, people come to you as a CPA, but then they maybe learn later on that, hey, you do other things other than just tax returns and tax advice. And so when you're, as a fractional CFO, what's the first thing that you're going to look at when you're helping a business grow?
The first thing that we look at is how they're doing things now. What are your processes? What are your procedures? And then look at kind of some of the holes that need to be filled. Or I forget who it was that said, draw all the, I think it was the E-Myth, where you draw the boxes and then you put, who's doing what box type thing. And then after that, you start changing things that need to be changed, keeping things that should be kept, and then developing a plan as you go along that says, okay, we changed your labor rates for a contractor. We changed your pricing for your product because while you say that you only need 3 widgets to make a kerplunk, in essence, you're using 4 because you waste 1, and you're not taking that into account.
It sounds like you're taking a look at like the baseline foundation. Where are you at right now? And then from there, you're like, so what's the goal? We want to grow.
Right.
Well, how do we do that financially, right? Obviously, to grow, you have to turn on sales. To grow, you have to get more leads. To grow, there's certain things you have to do that a CFO doesn't necessarily do, but you can, I guess, to make an analogy, it's almost like maybe building a frame on, once they are ready to grow, you start building a frame on top of that foundation.
Right. But you have to have a strong foundation first.
Okay. So first of all, make sure that the foundation is strong, then grow. Because sometimes people aren't ready for growth. They want growth. Every business wants growth, I think. Actually, they want more revenue would probably be a better term. They want more revenue. They want more cash flow. They want more money, right? But if they want to grow, then you need to make sure that they're healthy enough really to grow, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about some strategies that you help businesses use to build up some of that financial resilience then.
I think everybody is very focused on growing the revenue or the top line, if you will. But you also need to look at your cost structure. And again, we have a lot of familiarity with construction companies, either specialties like plumbing, electrical, HVAC, or general contractors. And you look at some of the costs that they have, and you just go, you ask them, what do you think your margin is on your work? And they'll go, 50%. If it costs me $1, I sell it for $2. And then you look at their financial statements and you go, no, if it costs you $1, I shouldn't say that. You're selling it for $2, but it's actually costing you $1.80. So you're not making 50%. You're making, 10%. And then why is that? Well, and then you get into I have inexperienced employees, so it takes them twice as long to do the job, or I'm using cheaper materials, so I have to put 5 coats of paint on instead of 2, and you just get into all that stuff. So okay, so if we can keep your revenue level the same and drop your costs, that's the same as, doubling your revenue.
The problems that you were just explaining, it sounds a lot like it looks good on paper, but in reality, that's not what actually happens. Like for that widget, like say I'm charging $2. So clearly my cost is, I thought it was going to be $1, but the example you gave me was $1.80. So they're really making, 20 cents on that. And there. So when you are there and you realize something like that, obviously you have to do some forecasting and some scenario role playing. So how does that help them with managing risk of, making these changes?
Well, I think it opens their eyes to what reality is, if you will, and it makes them more open to making some changes, and they don't necessarily have to be drastic changes, but making some small changes that grow and compound and get you out of the hole, or at least stop digging, and then we can plan for profits. First we've got to stop the bleeding before we can grow the business.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go back to that same scenario before where the person was talking about, I'm charging $2 because my cost is $1. And then you found out, no, your cost is actually $1.80, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be very, a real world scenario. They could say, well, then let's just charge $3.60, right? Instead of $2. But in the real world, that you're like, yes, that on paper, again, that looks good. But when we're managing risk, we're like, yeah, but will your clients actually pay $3.60? Will your customers pay that? Can you demand it? And so they might be in a situation where they're like, man, I don't know how to fix this. I can't charge more than $2 for this because I've got competition. And there could be a variety of reasons why their cost is $1.80, right? So as a CFO, you're maybe taking a look at, well, let's figure, how do we make our costs down? If we can't increase the $2 mark, how do we get it closer to the dollar? And would that be a fair assessment of what a CFO would be tasked to do?
Yeah, almost every industry has these rules of thumb that say, this is what your gross profit should be. This is what your labor costs should be. And, if you're not running there, you need to change what you're doing and adapt. And maybe, they say that your labor should be running at 20% and yours is at 15%. So you may be able to drop your cost and be more competitive and get more jobs and make more money.
So is that basically the role of the CFO, is to come up with these scenarios?
It's to guide the company along and make it more profitable.
Have you found a situation where maybe somebody hired you as a CPA and then you started just doing some CFO stuff just because it's what you do, and then you really kind of helped impact what they where they were headed? Do you have any stories maybe where, or maybe they were avoiding, like you helped them avoid like a major pitfall that they didn't realize they were heading towards, but because of this financial advice, you're able to position them for success?
There was an electrical contractor that we worked with. He was just starting out, had some employees, was struggling a little bit in getting his bidding down. And he couldn't figure out why he was always, maybe number 3 or 4 on the award list when they award contracts. Somebody had come in at $500,000 and he'd be coming in at $550,000. So he'd lose the contract, but not by that much. And we're just going through all of his costs and whatnot. And I'm like, well, why are you using 6% for this line item? Well, that's what the industry said to use. I'm like, well, based on your numbers, you're only at 3.5%. So if you can drop your bid by 2.5%, now you and we did, and now he was getting more projects, and he's grown. He bought his own building. And is doing very well now.
So he was able to get lower bids, but still maintain the same margins.
Right.
Which essentially means more money, more business, because he's winning more bids.
Yeah.
Makes sense.